I'm asking, would ditching net zero get your vote? Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho has claimed that Labour's mission to hit net zero carbon emissions in Britain's energy supply by 2030 is unrealistic and risks plunging the country into darkness. She talks of blackouts. Technologies are in different development to capture the surplus energy generated through renewables, such as wind turbines and solar panels. But Ms Coutinho says that such tech isn't ready, and without it, Labour risks unleashing wide public unrest. So Keir Starmer has pledged to fast-track wind and solar power projects in order to reduce the country's reliance on fossil fuels within 6 years, whereas the Tories are aiming for 11 years. But is the timeframe irrelevant? And would we, as a country, should we even be pursuing net zero at all? So for the Great British Debate this I'm asking, would ditching net zero get your vote? Well, joining me now, former Home Office Minister Norman Baker, Jim Dale, Senior Meteorologist from the British Weather Services, and Henry Bolton, Border Security Expert. Right, I'm going to start with you, Jim Dale. Ditching net zero, is it time to do it?
Is it time to do it? It's past the time to do it, to be honest with you.
Ditching it?
I'll tell you what's happening here. The Tories, Coutinho, she's basically chasing not to be last place. In other words, between Reform and themselves in terms of who's going to come up with the most stupidest policy. And they're going in that direction, just as they did at the local council elections and the mayoral elections. And look what happened there. It was a big test in London, and it fell apart for the Tories, particularly with ULEZ. But climate change was a big issue. It's still a big issue. It's not before time that we're talking about it. I'm really glad that we are talking about it. Much more needs to be done, even by the Labour Party, who are probably at the front of this in terms of moving in that direction. I hope they move faster. I've got my own 6-point manifesto, which I won't mention here, but nonetheless, I'll try and push whoever wins this general election in that direction. And it's good to be talking about it anyway.
Yeah, but what Claire is pointing out is that, we'll have blackouts because a lot of the energy generated in this renewable form we're not able to capture it yet. So, for example, one of the things collecting the electricity from the wind farms, a lot of it is wasted. We would need to build hundreds of miles of pylons, which we don't have, and we're unlikely to have that by 2030. Jim?
Yeah, well, look, I've always said on your programme, Nana, this is an evolution, not a revolution. And by the way, renewables, if you look at the way that they're moving in terms of the direction of travel, they're replacing coal, which is virtually non-existent now as a power source in the UK. Very often, certainly in the last 3 or 4 months, it's been the renewables have been top, and the other things have been, and that's that is the direction of travel. So this is just sounding off by.
No, but she's
Tories.
Saying that the time span, but they are both going in the same direction. Her point is that the time span would mean that we'd have blackouts because we are not ready. Norman Baker.
We won't have blackouts. That's just an absolute scare story. And the move towards net zero is sensible for 3 reasons. First of all, there is a climate emergency, whether people like it or not. Secondly, it's absolutely sensible to make sure we aren't dependent upon overseas sources from dodgy countries like Russia for our energy. And by getting our own energy generation levels up, we avoid that. And thirdly, actually, renewables will be, and in many cases are already, cheaper per unit, which will help reduce bills.
Well, but a lot of them currently now are being subsidised, which is why they're kind of cheaper at the moment.
Well, the subsidy all round, though. But nuclear power is enormous.
But the point that Claire is making is, again, that we do not have the infrastructure in place to reach it by 2030. So she's not saying that we shouldn't head there, but she's saying that basically we haven't got things in place. What do you think, Henry?
Well, I think that she's right. Look, Labour are saying that they're not going to raise taxes. The Conservatives are saying that they will. Look, if you're going to ramp this up, increase the timeline, as Labour are proposing, then you are going to have to spend massive amounts of money to do it. Massive, and resources, which also cost. So it's going to be, I simply don't think it's feasible. And we've got an economy that is already struggling. And GDP's higher, but GDP per capita is not increasing as well. And the reason for that, what that tells us is that ordinary people are struggling. Their cost of living is increasing compared to what their income is. So we've got to be very careful of that. The public can't take much more. And when we've got an economy that is actually creating so little in the way of global emissions, I think that we've got to pace ourselves sensibly, maturely. And, I'm not saying that net zero is not a good mission to pursue.
But is it?
I am saying that we've got to pursue it at a pace that is sensible and does not put undue pressure on the economy and ordinary people, as it is doing already.
Nobody's really questioning the actual premise of net zero. Some people are, and slightly being silenced by it, but why is no one even questioning the premise of it as to whether there may even be other things that we haven't realised maybe affecting the warming of the globe, or whether, in fact, the Earth will actually warm in any case? And a lot of people are of that point of view. Some people think that global warming is a natural phenomenon and that there's very little that we can do to stop it from happening, and the Earth itself will cool itself and get itself to the right temperatures, some of which we may not be able to exist. But if we are going to put technologies in place, the technologies we're using, if we're planning to do it at an arbitrary date of 2030, we will suffer greatly, Jim Dale. That is the problem, surely.
No, we have to get there a lot faster than 2030. If you look out your window, you can see what's going on in Austria yesterday. Cars floating, rich Austria, wealthy Austria, cars floating down the street in huge floods. We've seen it so many times in the last few months and years.
But we're not in Austria, and I looked out my window and it was warm but freezing. And what month are we in? It's May, is it? Yeah. Is it May or June? It's June, isn't it? It's June. It's supposed to be summer.
There are people who live in a padded cell who don't even look beyond that, to be honest with you. Let's make
so what's your point, Jim? Is that where you live?
UK event. It's a global event, not a UK event. And therefore, you've got to look more widespread. You've got to look at what's going on. We've had 12 months of 1.5 degrees C surpassed. That was the IPCC level. They said we don't need to pass that. 12 months in a row, ocean temperatures going in the same direction. I say to you now, watch this summer. You watch the catastrophes going around the globe. And by the way, in terms of the movement of this, I think I pick it up on Henry's point about it's the right direction. I think the Labour Party more or less got it wrong. I want them to go faster, but they're pulled back a little bit. Now,
you want them to go... hold on. You want them to go faster, but that's not possible because the infrastructure isn't there. And again, I come back to Claire Coutinho's point, is that as much as if you really believe in net zero and you think that is the way forward, then you have to acknowledge that in order to get there, you have to have the infrastructure in place, which it isn't there now. So I'm wondering if Claire is right, that actually we won't be able to harness the energy. If we get rid of our current sources too quickly, that we won't be able to harness the energy. Norman Baker.
Well, look, I mean, we've just had a couple of years of energy shocks, of prices going through the roof, largely because of, for example, the Ukraine war, where we've been dependent upon imports of gas from dodgy parts of the world, and we're not in control of that. If we get renewables and indeed energy conservation, we haven't talked about, up and running, then in fact we deal with that issue. We get more stability, and it will be cheaper. Prices will come down for people if we invest in renewables and energy conservation. That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah, you would think, but what energy company have you ever known that allows the prices to go down? Henry Bolton, have you ever seen energy prices go down, even if we are owning the source?
No, I haven't.
Exactly.
No. And look, Jim has said this is a global problem, yes. So we need to deal with it globally. What about China? What about India? What about the emerging economies that are the major source of the problem now? That's one thing. The other thing, though, is when we think about our own policy, what's seriously lacking is a national energy strategy. One of the reasons Norman's just talked about the Ukraine-Russia war and indeed and things going on in the Middle East, that raises the price of energy. But also, what about our national storage capacity? We didn't have anything like, when that war hit in Ukraine, we had nothing like the storage capacity that other countries have, and that then made sure that we suffered a shock rather than being able to cushion the economy accordingly. There's a much broader issue here.
So you think, Henry, you believe that we should pursue net zero, but at a slower or faster pace? Slower or...?
Much slower. Much slower.
And obviously, Norman, slower or...
As fast as we possibly can.
And Jim Dale?
Yeah, exactly the same. As fast as we can. Let's get there.
As fast as we can. Irrespective of the cost to the consumer or the fact that we may well have blackouts.
There'll be no blackouts, the cost to the consumer will go down.
OK. All right, well, listen...